19th, 2025, and tariffs and the price of strawberries. People are wondering if we're tariffing our own produce and things like that. And I think it's just we've increased the cost of everything so much, the cost of labor, the cost of everything, that's just how much Canadian produce sells for. And American produce is actually a lot cheaper if you just ship it in from the States, right? So, that's a problem. Trump endorses himself. Everybody's saying that Trump endorses Mark Carney. And that's not actually what happened. We're going to listen to what Trump actually said, the whole clip, rather than the cut 20 seconds, and you can decide for yourself. But I think it's more complicated than that. And he actually says, it doesn't matter really who's in charge. I'm going to do the same thing I was going to do. And I think they're going to become the 51st state. And so, it's Trump. Maybe that's actually what's going to happen. Who knows at all? Yesterday, it looked like the JFK files weren't going to be released. And then late in the afternoon, they were released. So there's some gems in there, very interesting stuff. And it's always who you think it is. Right? If you thought it was those people, it was definitely those people. Carbon tax is more expensive than you think it is. There are a whole bunch of hidden costs, et cetera, et cetera. And well, the carbon tax we'll look at because there's all sorts of interesting news about that. And instead of having an $80 per pound of CO2 per ton, it'll be $160 per ton now because Mark Carney's industrial carbon tax is actually going to double the carbon tax that we were paying before. So that's interesting, and we'll look at that. Economic stagnation is because of the invasion, according to Vice President Vance. The Daily Wire has gone bankrupt. Yes, and the story's crazy. I don't actually have a link for that, but I was looking at Ian Carroll's thing yesterday, and because I had heard that Jeremy Boring had stepped down as the CEO, and that Ben Shapiro and another guy had lost a lot of money because they had to put their own personal money into Daily Wire, all sorts of crazy stuff, and apparently they're going bankrupt. And I'm not surprised this is on the heels of the U.S. aid funds drying up. Very interesting, because they're influencers, and they were collecting influencers, and they had unending money, right, until they just didn't anymore. Trump putting American Academy together, which is a world-class education available to every American free of charge. So online university, basically, and it's free of charge, and it will be accredited. And that's interesting. That's how do you outcompete the rest of the world? You drop the cost of educating your citizens to next to nothing, right? And you let them self-educate like YouTube, right? And man, very, very interesting how effective that may be. We'll have to watch and see what the outcome is. Income tax changes. What's your name? Data Republican is talking about how the income tax being charged on citizens as a way to fund the government actually changes the game between the governed and the government. And it's inappropriate in the way it changes it. And I think she makes a great argument. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show as well. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We've got to start with tariffs, Donald Trump, and all the rest. And this is Sam Cooper and Jason talking about what is Trump doing. And I've expressed frustration at how bad Donald Trump is communicating what's going on. Because like Sam Cooper, I think he's doing this for a reason. He knows things that the general public in Canada don't know. CSIS has been leaking things, trying to warn us for years. People have been taking concerning documents to Trump since 2020, right? There were a whole bunch of people who had dossiers to give to Donald Trump saying, please come and save Canada. So Donald Trump is operating with more information than you or I or anybody really in this situation, I think. And Sam Cooper thinks that this has to do with China and Canada being infiltrated by China more than it has to do with any animosity Trump has for Canada or Trump has for our leadership or anything like that. He just knows that our leadership are puppets to China, and he's dealing with that in the way that only Trump can. And so here's Sam Cooper talking about that with Jason. And Jason says, Sam Cooper lays out the truth about Trump. Canada is the 51st state and the trade war. Mark Carney and the Liberals want to make Trump the boogeyman in minds of zombie Canadians, but in reality, it's all about China. Full episode premieres today, I guess that is. So here's a primer for this. We're going to listen to just a little bit of this, and then I'm going to jump him ahead a little bit to hear the harder stuff about Trump. Okay, so he's talking about Trump, and then he goes off into Russia, China, and kind of geopolitics in that area, and then comes back to Trump. So we'll listen to the important part.
People underestimate him as a leader.
Yeah.
He's very strategic, very forceful. And if he has one flaw, if I can be so bold, probably his hubris is he thinks he can peel China and Russia apart. And that will get to the goal that the United States, if it has to fight the powers, the dark powers of the world, China, Russia, Iran, that's a hard battle. We've got a bipartisan congressional committee on the CCP that, as maybe only in media last year was reporting, they now say the CCP intentionally sending fentanyl into North America, blah, blah, blah. Right? So this is the U.S. state preparing for war. And I do think that I just can't endorse the way he's going about what he's doing in Canada, because so many people are confused. If he was doing it better, there wouldn't be so many people confused about and feeling so offended. They'd know that, okay, Biden, Obama, now Trump, they don't trust what's going in Ottawa. It's not about the Canadian people, but the way he's gone about it now, and not just kind of like low information liberal partisans. A lot of people have adopted that opinion that he's against us. He wants to take us over, and they can't understand, no, at the end of the day, this is about China.
So there you go. This is about China. This isn't actually even really about us or our economy or what we can offer Donald Trump and the United States or anything like that. It has nothing to do with any of that. He is trying to deal with a perceived security threat, national security threat on the northern border. He says here, I don't care who wins in the next election. Doesn't matter if it's liberal or conservative. Liberals are probably easier to deal with. Everybody's spinning this as Donald Trump has endorsed Mark Carney, and I don't hear an endorsement here. This is not what I hear when I listen to what Donald Trump's saying here. So, do you hear an endorsement? Let me know in the comments. Here we go.
Much more. We have much more.
I don't think so.
Just so you understand, we subsidize Canada, and I like Canada. I love Canada. I love Wayne
now
Gretzky.
the Liberal guys.
I love his wife.
The Liberal Party is
everything.
going to win now in the next election,
I don't
most
care.
likely. And they were down and out.
I don't
Isn't that
care.
going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
No, I'd rather
open the
deal
door
with a liberal than a
for
conservative.
China closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal. And maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all.
So your end game is what with them?
My end game is I don't want to have a big deficit. I don't want to see the United States of America, and you say 60 and I say 200, but it doesn't matter. I don't want us to pay 60 or 200 billion dollars to a country that if they were a state, think of this, it would be our biggest, most beautiful, it would be great.
He goes off on talking about how great Canada would be as a state. And I mean, realistically, we'd need to be 5 or 6 states. I don't think one state would cut it, but who knows? But I think that it's very interesting. That's not an endorsement. He's not saying, Mark Carney is super easy to deal with. Mark Carney seems above board. Mark Carney doesn't have yellow teeth. He doesn't say any of those things. He's just talking about how it doesn't really matter who wins, and the conservative leader is stupidly not a friend of his, right? So very interesting. TR6 Vaughn says, right from Pierre Poilievre's mouth, Pierre wants to divorce Canada from the United States. We cannot survive without the United States. And here's Poilievre. It's framed differently in the tweet than what he says, but here's what he says.
This week, Canadians heard Ontario Premier Doug Ford, a conservative, praise the new Prime Minister Mark Carney, saying that he can, quote, smooth things with Trump and has an astute business mind that will appeal to the president. How would you convince voters otherwise?
By reminding them that the choice is, do you want to elect Liberals to a 4th term after they doubled the debt, doubled housing costs, doubled food bank lineups, doubled gun crime, and weakened our economy, making it more dependent on the United States? Or do they want to vote for common sense, Canada First conservatives who will axe taxes, build homes, fix the budget, stop the crime, and unleash production and paychecks so that we can declare our full economic independence from the Americans? That is the choice that Canadians will face.
Full economic independence from the Americans. Is he going to tell us that in order to pivot our trade to the EU, we have to have an industrial carbon tax at a certain rate? Because that's the rules. Is he going to tell us that too? That's what Mark Carney said. Here's Mark Carney, and Pascal says his British accent returns a bit when he's nervous and unsure about his answer. Good to know for future reference. Keep an eye on that. He's lie detecting himself. Just a very, very light hint of it. Here's just a minute of Mark Carney.
You will have a call with President Trump in the coming days. What are your expectations for the president in that call?
I think, let me say a few things. The first is that the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Canada, but certainly the President of the United States has many responsibilities, and there are many issues. I can think of many geostrategic issues that the President is helping to lead on, and you can think of events most recently in with respect to the Houthis and all the way through to trade and other aspects. So there's a wide range of issues to be discussed when we do connect. With respect to trade, I look forward to, at the appropriate time, having a discussion as two sovereign nations that is comprehensive, not targeted at one issue.
So that was a minute of saying absolutely nothing about the question that was asked to him. It's very interesting. He's asked about trade, and he says, the President of the United States has lots of really important responsibilities. Sure, he does. Sure, but you were asked about trade, man, and like tariffs and a trade war that we're heading into that you're ignoring, and you're off in Europe. And what's with the Snuggie? Like, why are you guys wearing Snuggies? I don't understand. The wearable blanket. Weird, right? If I'm going to a press conference, I might wear my suit. I get that it's maybe. Is that what they wear in the Northwest Territories? Is that some cultural thing?
You will have.
Did I miss that everybody wears Star Trek outfits up there? Honestly, it's very, very strange. Here is economic woes, and they say, why are Canadian grown strawberries more expensive than U.S. grown? Who is messing with who? We have some sort of domestic tariffs on ourselves. Yeah, we're getting tariffed by our own. So greenhouse grown strawberries, product of Canada, grade 1, $6.99 a package, so $7 for those ones. $2.99 for product of USA, same grade strawberries. You want some strawberries? We got some strawberries. You want to pay extra through the nose? These ones come from a greenhouse. Why so expensive? Because labor costs. Because we have very, very high everything costs, high electricity costs, high land costs, high everything. So same thing in the United States. Much cheaper to set up, much cheaper to recoup your costs, and then you can, set prices at market level and just make some money and be happy, right? Be fine. Sending strawberries to Canada, right? The food professor says supply management has been detrimental to many agricultural sectors beyond dairy, and now Canada is repeating the same mistake with EVs. Our trading partners are retaliating, China, punishing the very farmers Ottawa claims to support. Brilliant strategy. He's being sarcastic. Cody says, I had a great conversation with the dairy farmers of Canada this morning. Canada's supply management system plays a crucial role in maintaining our food sovereignty and ensuring a stable, secure food supply for all Canadians. I'm committed to maintaining a close and strong relationship with the sector as we navigate through the days ahead. And Kobe is MP for Kings Hants, and he's the Minister of Agriculture. So no change. No change. Nobody's messing with the supply management at all. Sorry about that. Dan McTeague, let's talk about annexation of Canada. Dan McTeague says, terrific news for Liberals. Trump appears to have made his choice. It's Carney, likely a run-on tissue paper at some stores given the weeping. Bradshaw says, Trump is endorsing Mark Carney because a Liberal is easier to deal with. Did you hear that? I didn't hear that. That's not what I heard. I think that he wants to annex Canada. I guess this should have been in the beginning, but here's Pierre Poilievre responding to Trump talking about Carney or Poilievre, and he says, last night President Trump endorsed Mark Carney. Why? Because as Trump said, he's easier to deal with and knows that I will be a tough negotiator and always put Canada first. Carney is weak and would cave to Trump's demands, just like he did when he moved his company headquarters from Canada to New York City. That's a bit shoehorned in there, don't you think? That's not really analogous. That's not caving to Donald Trump, is it? He was doing that last year anyway. Like, he was doing it to dodge taxes, not to avoid tariffs. Come on, man. Canadians don't want a weak and conflicted leader. They want a strong prime minister who will put Canada first. Right. Where is that guy? Because, we're waiting for him. We are. Don says, let's talk about Mark Carney a little bit more tightly. Don says, this is truly comical. Now Mr. Carney agrees that there are potential conflicts of interest. Ha! It's pretty funny. So this is a Globe and Mail article, Politics Insider. Carney says he will recuse himself from files that may affect assets in the blind trusts. So, This is just Politics Insider, and somebody asked, and he said, yes, I will. And so he will step away. He will step away when, quote, there's a decision that will have a major impact on Brookfield. The company has investments in renewable power and transportation data, industrial sectors, housing, pipeline storage, retail, office, and credit. That will be a lot of stepping away. Better sit near the door. So the prime minister is conflicted. And first he said he wasn't. And look inside yourself, Rosemary. You're coming from a place of ill intent, I think he said, or he didn't say malice, but close enough. But the just look inside yourself thing was weird. And I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. Western Standard's reporting Mark Carney pledges $673 million in Arctic military spending, Indigenous reconciliation. So this is Mark Carney being in the Northwest Territories wearing the get-up here. And how is he spending money with a government that hasn't tested confidence after prorogation, and he's just going off and doing campaign trips and none of it? Isn't that weird? And promising $600 million, which also undercuts Poilievre's plan to build a military base in the north as well. Here's Sam Cooper. He says, Carney's chief of staff, Marco Mendicino, warned of Beijing's Vancouver mayoral election interference in 2022. Didn't do anything about it. So shucks darn. We knew about it then, though. People were talking about it. Sam Cooper was talking about it at the time. I remember reporting on it. People were talking about it, and nothing was done. Nothing was followed up with. In fact, I think, didn't the chief of police or the RCMP, it was the RCMP that came out and said, we can't actually do anything about all of this election interference we're seeing. So have at her. I think something, paraphrasing, but something like that. And so we've known about a lot of this for a while. And nobody does anything, right? Marco Mendicino goes, thank you for telling me, and then puts it in a drawer and promptly forgets about it, right? Never to be thought of again. Buck is responding to Arthur. Arthur says, plenty of discussion about Carney's more visible role at BAM, which is Brookfield. First as vice chair and later appointed chairman of the board. His holdings at Stripe are not disclosed as company is still private, so Stripe is still private, I think, or Brookfield is private. I'm not sure which one it means, but my guess is his reluctance to disclose his net worth is related to his Stripe holdings. Probably, I think. And Buck says Stripe seized and retained fees on convoy donations, give, send, go, and returned them 100%, or Give, Send, Go refunded them 100%, but the Stripe didn't. Carney personally profited from the illegal use of banking system to undermine legitimate political speech. He also called protesters seditionists. Yeah, during the convoy, Carney penned a whole bunch of. There were some National Post articles, some interviews he did, and the framing was very, very harsh on the protesters and misrepresented, I thought, their grievances in a way that was intentional. It didn't seem like he didn't know. It seemed like he was trying to mislead. Barbara is responding to Kevin Vung. Kevin says, I'm seeing attacks on Prime Minister Carney's daughter, and I want to implore, as someone whose family has been indiscriminately targeted, in Canada, members of our family are off limits. Leave them out of it. Now, this does not apply in this situation, in my opinion, because Mark Carney's daughter is an activist and an adult. If Mark Carney's daughter was a 17-year-old and an activist, I would have reservations about being, well, I mean, I think I would talk about her, but it wouldn't be, it would be like Ella Grace or Hadrian or anything like that. I mean, you don't want to launch your music career on the back of your prime minister dad. It's just a bad idea, Hadrian. Okay, come on. So like, I'll talk about the kids a little bit, but I'm not going to go after the kids. I'm not going to go after how they look. I'm not going to go after anything like that. But in this situation, she's a gender ideologue and she's an activist for gender ideology and she's an adult, right? So if those things weren't true, I think that, yeah, that there is decorum around that, but she's put herself in this situation. She's done this to herself, or her father's done this to her, one or the other. Gov.exe says, for those who say leave the kids out of this and Mark Carney's child should be off limits, first, Mark Carney has 4 children. All are over 18. They're not kids. Like Hunter Biden shouldn't be left out for virtue that he's a kid, like of a president, right? Like he's an adult who recorded himself doing some pretty crazy things. Like, I think that I would be very concerned if I was, and I would never be in a situation like this, but if I was in a situation like this, I would probably not turn on the camera, right? Like, it's weird that he's recording all of that stuff and then putting it on his laptop and then bringing it into a shop. Kids are off limits? Like, I don't know, man. I think that's crazy. Anyway, first, Mark Carney has 4 children. They're all over 18. They're not kids. Second, I recall these people targeting kids during COVID. So get out of here. And then he backs it up with, remember when the kids were being targeted? Here is a flashback to the COVID era. He says, gov.exe says, to those now saying, leave the kids alone, remember when unvaccinated families were kicked out of Ronald McDonald House and actual kids were banned from Tim Hortons camp? Where was the outrage then? Oh, that was different, you say. You're right. It was much worse. Here is, do we need to listen to Tim Hortons banning kids from camp?
Now to a media firestorm sparked by an unvaccinated Kelowna family. They're staying at Ronald McDonald House because their 4-year-old son is undergoing cancer treatment. But the family blew up when they heard about the charity's vaccine mandate. Then they posted that they were being kicked out.
Earlier this week, parents staying at the
So don't make it about the kids, okay? Right? This kid got caught in the crossfire. This family got caught in the crossfire, and it's awful. And I mean, Canada did that, right? Terrible. Alberta radical feminist is responding to Kevin Vung's imploring, keep the kids out of it. And they say, said daughter is an adult and an activist whose politics are at the center of a massive international debate. And her father, an unelected prime minister, is now running the party that supports the ideology that has captured her and has run women's rights straight into the ground in this country. It's relevant, and criticism is not targeting. Yeah, and I don't think anybody is criticizing. I mean, I'm not criticizing her. I'm just saying she uses they, them pronouns. She goes by a different name than her birth name. And she's gone to the Tavistock Gender Ideology Clinic, I guess, at the behest of her father or something to that effect. That's what I read. I'm not sure if that's true. And so this is something that is very relevant to Canadian politics these days, and we should be able to talk about it. Absolutely. Here's Mark Carney saying Canada is the most European non-European country, which is a weird thing to say for the first trip as Prime Minister to France. Right? Like, weird. Here we go. Sorry, that's loud.
With you, Mr. President, I want to ensure that France and the whole of Europe works enthusiastically with Canada, the most European of non-European countries, determined like you to maintain the most positive possible relations with the United States. Canada is a reliable, trustworthy and strong partner of France, which shares our values and lives them through action during this age of economic and geopolitical crises.
France is also importing a replacement population and burning out their history as well. So, and Macron, I don't know how he's still president, although people in the comments did explain to me there's coalitions and different ways that Macron has been able to retain leadership. So he is still the legitimate leader of France. He's not living on borrowed time. I thought there was like a wind down period where he was in a handover of power for 6 months where the new president or prime minister would be working with him. But that was wrong. That was totally wrong. And anyway, people were telling me in the comments about how it actually works, and I guess he's still in charge. Maybe after the next election, Le Pen will get them. David Jacobs says Carney's entire trip to Europe should be counted against his election campaign spending. Absolutely nothing was accomplished on this trip other than increasing Carney's personal profile. Yep, this afternoon at Buckingham Palace, the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, was received by an audience by the King. So there you go, hanging out with the King, and that's interesting. Here he is in his Snuggie again. Mark says Mark Carney is opening up the money printers with a new $255 million commitment in 570 homes and electric power for the North. How is Carney able to spend money if the government is prorogued and he has zero confidence by the House? What is going on in Canada? Yeah, I mean, this prorogation should be over by now, and the House should be recalled, and they should have had a confidence vote, and we should maybe be plunged into an election. But Carney it was more important to get over to England and bend the knee to Charles? I'm not entirely sure what's going on, and it doesn't seem like we have any timelines. Do we have a timeline on when Parliament's coming back? Are they going to try and shove Bill C-63 through very, very quickly I think 63. Was it 63? The censorship one. To just get it through and passed before this election, because they definitely want that. Here's Canada Proud, and Pierre Poilievre's talking about celebrating our heritage again. And this would work Well, he'd be like, if he said this in 2018, he would be removed from the Conservative Party. Basically, nobody wanted nationalism, right? And now that he's saying this now, I feel like it's not enough. It doesn't address the issues that people are actually worried about now. It addresses the issues that people were worried about a few years ago. So it seems late by any measure. But I mean, do you think this will play well? Here we go.
I also think we need a renewed commitment to celebrating our heritage and our identity. Over the last 10 years, there's been a tendency to tear down our statues, change the names of different public monuments in order to cancel our history. I think that has weakened the bonds that used to tie us together. I believe that we should celebrate our history. We should honor our first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, without whom we would not have a Canada today. His vision of an East-West nation is really now more than ever needed. So we will be naming public monuments after him and many of our other historical figures. We will put a renewed focus on celebrating the military history, the extremely proud military history that we have over a century of defending freedom at home and around the world. We will ensure that our young people have chances to participate in that history by expanding, for example, the Cadet Corps and other programs that bring our people together from coast to coast to coast to coast. We now more than ever, we have to celebrate our proud heritage and our common Canadian identity. That's what unites us. Let's bring it home.
Yeah, but you're still missing, like, we're being invaded. We're being robbed. Our whole country is throwing money at Ukraine for nothing. We're spending millions of dollars to put up billboards about pooping in foreign African countries for nothing. And so, like, he's saying, oh, we've got to be super prideful of our history, while at the same time ignoring some terrible policies that are doing some real damage. And I don't think it's not the right tone. I mean, it's going to play well. There are going to be a lot of people who say this is exactly what we need to hear. This is what we need to do. But I think it's missing it. I think we're missing it. And I think that we need more audits. We need more public transparency. We need more real time. Like, listen, if you incentivize the public, we're going to publish. We're going to audit this. As we audit, we're going to publish. We're going to cancel programs. We're going to put up a debt clock like they've got in the United States. That thing's great. Holy smoke, that thing's really good. And like, how come Canada doesn't have that? We should have that. Maybe I'll build it. That'll be fun. A Canada Poly debt clock. But we could get a handle on things, and we should. But I was talking to Greg yesterday. We did a Speaking Moistly, and the whole setup is you're not allowed to actually fix the problems. That's why whatever powers that be have a problem with Trump, because he's actually fixing the problems. Maybe not too. Greg and I talk about that, but he's actually fixing some problems. They hate Elon Musk because he's using Doge to take out fraudulent payments. How many fraudulent payments do you think Canada's making? I think a lot, right? So Poilievre's not talking about any of that kind of stuff. Is that the debt clock? Thanks people in the comments. The stream's really fun. I'm enjoying the stream. It's really good. So speaking of, I'm going to have to cut it off soon, but it's a really good addition. I appreciate it. So yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm concerned that we're being bilked and Poilievre's offering red herrings rather than solutions, right? And that's very, very concerning. Tom Quiggin says Toronto and Vancouver now have higher rates of crime than New York and Los Angeles, and that's scary, but totally believable. I absolutely believe that. And Maxime Bernier is heading down to Florida, and he's going to be doing he says, I'm heading to Florida and Texas in the coming days to have what I'm sure are going to be very interesting interviews you won't want to miss with influential podcasters. So it seems like Maxime Bernier is going to do Joe Rogan. So that's going to be very interesting. Here's Data Republican. Oh, I'm glad this is on the stream part, because I wanted to, this is important. I think she's exactly right about how she's explaining the relationship between the governed and the government and how taxation changes it. Sorry, my nose is itchy. Data Republican says, I've had a change of heart on federal income tax. On the surface, it's just a way for the government to generate revenue. It has to get its funding from somewhere. But now I see that the method of taxation itself fundamentally alters the relationship between the government and its people. When the government relies on taxing individual income, it shifts from serving its citizens to exploiting them as a revenue source. This dynamic creates an inherent friction where the government no longer answers to the people, but to the system that extracts from them. And if you look around, it's clear whatever our tax dollars are funding, it's not serving us. This is what modern economists fail to grasp when they dismiss tariffs, sales taxes, or luxury taxes as harmful. The structure of taxation matters, not just the amount collected. The income tax distorts governance itself, and it needs to go. And yeah, again, Poilievre missing an opportunity to address something that Trump is taking a samurai sword to and just cutting through. Poilievre isn't even addressing, not even saying there might be a problem that we could address here, similar to what's going on in the United States. But we're going to get screwed. We're just getting screwed. We're going to put up our statues again. We're going to stop taking a crap all over your culture and history. That's what we're promising for you. You're welcome, right? You're not a pariah, or you're not a savior in that, man. Like, it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. We need to actually solve the problems. And in order to solve the problems, we need to address the problems head on. And first, we need to be able to articulate the problems, say them out loud. Say, this is a problem, this waste, this bloat, this glut, we're going to get rid of it. But they don't want to. They don't want to because they and their friends benefit. And that's very, very concerning. And I've got to say goodbye to the stream. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful